Selling a little or a lot? Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your own online shop stage to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit 1 million orders stage? Shopify's there to help you grow. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout. 36% better on average compared to the other leading commerce platforms. Because businesses that grow with Shopify. Get a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/promo. Shopify.com/promo.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Music, the show that looks at the money behind the music industry. With me, Steve Lemack, and Music Ally's Head of Insight, Stuart Dredge. It is time to deal in this episode with some more questions from our listeners. Thank you very much to everyone who's been in touch. Without further ado, let's start with this one from John Hayden, who says, your chat about secondary ticketing websites and the flotation of StubHub got me thinking about a question I've always asked myself but never found out the answer to. How are these websites allowed to act with impunity when your traditional tout outside a venue could be arrested for selling tickets illegally above face value? For me, this is exactly the same thing. And in fact, I would imagine that these websites per ticket actually sell tickets at a much higher price than the dodgy guy outside a venue. This turns out to be it's a slightly more grey area than I thought, because I just assumed that your ticket tout gets nicked. Meanwhile, the websites carry on, partly because they're trying to be perceived as just being portals for other people to sell their tickets. Is that about right? But it's not, though, actually.
Well, that's part of it. But yeah, I mean, so I went to the Fanfare Alliance. So they're the body that's been campaigning for reform of secondary ticketing. And they've got a really good explainer. And it explains, reselling music tickets isn't actually illegal in the UK. It is in countries like France and Norway, it says. But actually, in the UK, you can't resell football tickets. That's been banned since 1994. But it's not against the law to resell live music tickets for profit. What you can't do is you can't use software. You can't use a bot to buy loads of tickets to sell.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't buy tickets using multiple identities. But in terms of just getting a ticket and selling it to someone else for more money, that's not technically illegal. And in a way, I mean, I think a lot of us have been in that situation where we've bought a ticket, couldn't go, and we've sold it to a friend for face value.
Yeah.
So reselling not being illegal is quite good for us in that sense. We haven't committed a small crime.
Mm-hmm.
But the other aspect of this is StubHub, Viagogo, these secondary sites. They are providing a platform for other people to sell tickets rather than buying the tickets themselves and selling them on. Mm. So there's that kind of whole argument about them being just the middleman. So the issues around it, where I think it's talked of being controversial, I think it comes partly from when the prices are massively inflated. It comes also from when you search for tickets and the first thing you find is a secondary ticket selling them for loads of money rather than a primary ticket. It's when they're misleading. If some people might go on Viagogo and sell tickets they haven't actually bought yet. So it's speculative secondary ticketing. That's bad. And even fraudulent, someone sells you a ticket that actually isn't a ticket at all and you don't get in. So there's all kinds of problems, but those problems aren't as such the reason why it's illegal. Well, they don't make it legal. So what's happened? I mean, you've probably seen this more than I have, but there have been efforts to kind of crack down on this from the music industry rather than for the law. So some promoters have, when they've seen a ticket being sold on a secondary site, they've cancelled it. Was it Ed Sheeran gigs? There was one where there was a ticket amnesty where you could take the tickets you bought from Viagogo and you could buy a new ticket and still get into the gig because you wouldn't get in with the one you bought on secondary sites. So a lot of the action so far has not been police taking action, arresting anyone. It's been the industry trying to stop this because it's not illegal.
Yeah, we mentioned last week some of the things that the new Labour government might be campaigning for or getting involved with in terms of things around the music industry. But secondary ticketing is one of the things that Labour has said it will look into, and they are it appears the noises they're making are they do want to clamp down on some of the worst practice going on around the secondary ticketing market. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. But I think that was, and it's a sort of easy win in a way. I think is to be able to come out and say, look, we're going to clamp down on the touts, or the worst parts of the industry. Whereas you say people are making a lot of money out of buying bulk amounts of tickets and then selling them on for an extortionate profit. So that's something which I think. Can I just, while we're on the subject of ticket touts, can I just mention my favourite ever tout?
Mm.
Which, I mean, I know this sounds weird, and then this is going back years, but there was a guy that I'd always see around venues like Brixton Academy and the Forum in Kentish Town in North London. And I don't know how successful he was, but he reliably used to get the names of bands wrong all the time, or at least 1 in 3 times, including one night as I was walking up to the Astoria, RIP, the Astoria in London. Jimmy Eat World were playing, and as I walked up towards the door, I just heard him among the throng of people gathered outside saying, anyone want tickets for Jimmy Eats the World? I'll buy or sell. Jimmy Eats the World. And he always couldn't get the name of the band right, which I would have thought if you decided on a career in ticket touting, at least get the name of the artist right.
Was that his thing, do you think? Was that his commercial strategy to stand out from the crowd of touts, though? It's funny. We should say, actually, that secondary ticketing itself doesn't have to be bad or unfan friendly. Like Twickets is a good example of somewhere where it's really for fans who can't go to a gig. So I think the key thing here is, I think Labour said they might try and have a cap on maximum 10% extra on the price of a ticket. So I think being able to resell tickets being legal is a really good thing, because it means if you can't go, you can shift your ticket to someone else.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just the kind of the abuses of it that I think are being cracked down on. And that's where, like you say, that we may see a change in the law. So some things that weren't illegal now are.
Mm. It is noticeable. I don't know how much from the gigs that you've been to, because you go to 1 or 2 big gigs, which are the sort of places where you would, in the old days, see touts congregating outside. I see a lot less actual ticket touts these days than I used to, than 10 years ago, certainly 20 years ago. Every time you went to a gig at the Forum in Kentish Town, you come out of the tube station, and I mean, it's a 5-minute walk to the venue. But as soon as you came out of the tube station, from the tube station to the front door of the venue, there'll be a tout every 100 yards virtually. And I don't see so many actual touts these days. Have you noticed that?
Maybe, yeah, it's true. Maybe they are. Maybe it's nicer to sit at home on the internet and sell your tickets on Viagogo. Maybe that business has moved online, and standing outside in the cold is a mugs game. Who knows? Yeah. We should get, if anyone. I wonder if anyone's listening who has actually been or is a tout. It'd be really interesting to actually talk to or hear from them. What's changed for them? How's the money working? That might be quite a fun episode sometime if they're willing to talk.
You know the email address, and if you don't, we'll give it to you at the end of the programme. Question from Matt Rayner. I'd like to ask a question about music metadata. Who is responsible for making sure it's accurate, and how do artists stop themselves from being tagged in songs they have no links to? As an example, I have a weekly playlist, Release Radar, which you'll find on Spotify. Other streaming services are available, says Matt. And it updates with new music from A, artists I like, and B, music that the algorithm thinks I will like based on my music preferences. What is really frustrating, says Matt, is when an artist I do like is tagged as one of the artists against some instrumental track that clearly has nothing to do with them. It seems to me this must be done to generate listens and potentially revenue. I'm often more than 30 seconds into a song before I realise and skip the track or hide it to prevent any further accidental plays. But when I've tried to report it, it appears to be reliant on the artist to do something about it. So it's incorrectly tagged songs or songs attached to an artist who didn't make the song. How does this muddle happen? Thank you, by the way, Matt. Talk us through the whole business of music metadata, just for people like myself who become easily confused when it comes to phrases like this.
I like your assumption that I'm not easily confused by it as well. I do invest.
Yeah, you're the tech guru. You understand all of this.
Every single word.
Yeah.
So metadata, to break it down, metadata is all the information around a track. It's the name of the artist, the name of the song, but it's also stuff like genre, all the information you can attach to a track when you're uploading it to a streaming service to say what it is, what it's like. And this has become really important in recent years because a lot of the recommendation algorithms of streaming services work on this. So it's really important when you're releasing music to have every bit of metadata you can around it, every bit of descriptive information that will help it be correctly thing. Not to mention it's things like the songwriters and the publishers of those, all that information, which ensures people get paid. So correct metadata helps you get discovered. It also helps people get paid. So technically, on a streaming service, it's a label or the distributor who's responsible for the metadata on a track, because when they upload the track, they have to upload the metadata with it. And if you're an independent artist who's using a distributor, you'll type in that metadata when you're doing the kind of process of uploading it. So when you're adding your artwork, when you're uploading the song, you'll create this. And that's where the issues come in. I've had the same thing actually as Matt has. So I remember a few years ago, I really liked, there's this Danish band called Ira, who were kind of, I might oversell it here. They were like Kate Bush crossed with Radiohead. Like they were kind of like, imagine if Kate Bush had done everything in its right place, like that sort of vibe. And they were brilliant. Not very, they were kind of very small in terms of listeners. And there's also a rapper called Ira from the UK, and he's on the last Chase and Status album. So they're two artists the same name, which is not an unusual problem. But I remember once he appeared in my Release Radar playlist, which is the kind of everything out new from the artists you follow this week. And it was quite a surprise to hear kind of some brisk British rap rather than like ethereal Danish, dream pop.
Yeah.
So this is like not an unheard of thing, and it can be just that, an innocent mistake. Two artists with the same name who the metadata hasn't been there because they haven't been kind of said that this artist is this Ira, not that Ira. So it can happen by accident. It could happen on purpose. I mean, I can't upload a track and say it's by Beyonce and trouser loads of royalties for it. Like that's egregious stuff. But you can have people mistagging artists. So in terms of who sorts it out, I actually went to Spotify. Other streaming services are available, as Matt says. If your metadata is wrong, Spotify says your label and distributor can help fix this. So if your metadata is not right. And there's also a form on Spotify artists. If you search Spotify for artists mixed up music, there's a form you can report mixed up music and say, right, this is not my song, but it's been tagged as me.
Right.
And the solution apparently is that you just, when you deliver music, you give it a specified artist ID. So not just a name, but a specific number that is only that artist. And that should sort the problem. So yeah, in short, it's labels and distributors. But then if it's a distributor, it's the artist's work. And yeah, it can be an accident. We're at the point now where so many band names have been taken that there are going to be clashes. And so if that's where getting this metadata right is really crucial, so that you don't end up in someone's playlist who won't like you or, masquerade as another artist.
Well, the point where I realised that we were facing an international band name crisis was back in the 90s, and this when I was co-running this little record label, Deceptive Records, and we've mentioned it before. In fact, Anthony from this band asked a question on a listener's question special a couple of weeks ago. But Collapse Lung, the band from Harlow, where I was living at the time, we put out their first records, and I think it must have been when the debut album came out, around about that point, when they obviously became noticed further afield than just Essex. But they had a cease and desist letter from a band in America called Collapsing Lung. Now, if you can't call yourself Collapse Lung and think there's no one else called Collapse Lung, right? No one else is going to be silly enough to call their band Collapse Lung. And then I believe, and Anthony, get back in touch if you remember this, or if I've got the story wrong. But I'm sure, it was an American band saying, we're called Collapsing Lung. You're infringing on our copyright.
That would be a great double headliner to collapsing lungs. I mean, it's funny. I've been thinking about this because one of the driest sessions you can go to at a music conference nowadays, industry conference, is the session on metadata, because it's a dry subject. It's really important, but it's hard to talk about it in a very engaging way. But it is becoming only more important. So, for example, one of the things we're talking about is AI recommendations, and the idea of you can now type into Spotify, make me a playlist for listening to on a yacht while drinking a cup of tea, and it will try and find music to that. And that's where music metadata becomes important, because it will go out and it will look at all the metadata around songs and say, right, well, that might be suitable for this thing I've been asked to do. So as we get more conversational with streaming services, so this stuff is going to be house of fun, which is not to say as an artist you have to upload saying it's really good for drinking tea and also yachts, which you could do. You could put all these keywords in, desperately trying to find, but it's yeah, I think as an artist, there are quite a few guides out there. If you search for like music metadata guides, as an independent artist, it's one of the most important things is getting this right, because it's how you'll get found and it's how you'll get paid.
Maybe that'll be one of our games for the summer when we have a little bit more time. We'll go head to head with an algorithm. Come up with, in fact, if anyone wants to come up with the title of a playlist, the theme of a playlist, and then we'll let the algorithm do it, and then we'll have a go at actually doing it ourselves, and you can see which one is better.
We can vote. Well, I would say they could vote, but then that's worrying because they might not vote for us. So.
That's entirely possible. Finally, for this episode, this is a question from Adrian Mansfield, who says, as we're now well into the festival season, I'm interested to understand how acts get paid from festivals. I assume headline acts take the largest percentage, but how would a mid-card act benefit, especially at a smaller 2 to 3 day event with a large number of acts? And we sort of touched on this in our show, which is dated July 5th. If you missed that one, Adrian, have a listen to that when we were talking about outdoor gigs. But we'll do this again. I'll try not to repeat myself too much. But at the time, at least one industry insider I spoke to told us that it's entirely possible, Adrian, that using your example of, say, of a 3-day festival, and certainly when it comes to the bigger festivals, that the money paid to the 3 headline acts could be as much as 50% of the festival's entire budget, because obviously they're the headline attractions. They're the people in bold letters who will help the promoters sell the tickets. What we didn't mention at the time, though, and I guess this applies to your question as well, is that someone I spoke to noted that while the fees for the top level bands have increased markedly in the last decade, the money for acts who are appearing in the middle of the bill has gone up much more slowly. And for opening artists, having talked to a couple of people about this, with a fee you get for being one of the first couple of bands on has barely changed at all in the past 10 years. So it's entirely possible now that the headline artists, and again, it depends on how big the festival is, but say you're one of the big 5 festivals, you could be getting, I don't know, £500,000 upwards, say, while the first band on is still getting a couple of £100, if that, depending on what festival you're doing. Because, as I say, it depends on the size of the festival and what budgets they're working with. And it is, I put out a couple of emails this week to people who are in the know and work in live music, including a couple of agents. It's hard trying to pin people down on actual fees. Partly because of all the variables, as just mentioned, but also I don't think anyone likes to let on what their bands are being paid, because there's a bit of ducking and diving to be done when you're an agent trying to get your band on a bill. But anyway, one booking agent, our secret booking agent, did say, and I'll quote him here, he said, as an agent, you are still striving to get more than a standalone ticketed show. So you want to get more than if it was just one of your headline gigs. And that's, again, quoting here, that's because the show is technically a one-off situation where you've got to pay crew, you've got to pay for a bus or at least your transport costs, you've got to pay for accommodation if that's not provided by the promoter, and possibly even rehearsals. And of course, just being a one-off gig, you're not spreading this over a number of dates, so costs can become very high very quickly for one show. But normally the promoter would know what sort of worth ticket-wise the band has, and then they'll make their offer accordingly, depending on how much the promoter wants or needs your band. for their billing, and also, of course, how much your band, the bands, want or need to play that festival. So there's an awful lot of negotiation goes on. But if anyone else would, I mean, if anyone's listening who, if you wouldn't mind telling us, if you are in a band and you've been in this position middle on at a festival, do feel free to contact us on or off the record. You and the touts can both go to thepriceofmusicpodcast@gmail.com, where you can leave your comments or your insider knowledge. But the thing is, it's all about the names. It's all about what that name is going to mean to a certain amount of people. And that dictates your value, doesn't it?
Want a website with unmatched power, speed, and control? Try Bluehost Cloud, the new web hosting plan from Bluehost, built for WordPress creators by WordPress experts. With 100% uptime, incredible load times, and 24/7 WordPress priority support, your site will be lightning fast with global reach. And with Bluehost Cloud, your sites can handle surges in traffic no matter how big. Plus, you automatically get daily backups and world-class security. Get started now at bluehost.com.
Two things I was thinking about. One is like, I guess I'm always aware of anyone saying it's promotion. It's good promotion because that's normally a way of not paying you much. But I guess if you're at a festival, are you going to get on the TV? If it's something like Glastonbury, you might, or Reading Leeds being televised, and that, can you get a bump from that? I always get press releases after festivals saying such and such an act got a 197% spike in streams after this festival because they're on the telly. So I guess you're hoping for that kind of thing. But also, at Glastonbury some years, you'll hear about there'll be some artist who's played like 17 times over 4 days. And you always think, oh God, they must be literally banging on the doors of staging and let me have a go. But maybe that's a smart way to do it. You maximize if you're playing a bunch of different sets around the festival, if you're getting paid for all of them, maybe that's the way to make it add up. You stay there for 4 days, get paid 15 times. DJ sets. I guess you have to maybe try and do more than just one set. Perhaps that's the way to make it work. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, that's possible. I mean, looking at the festivals, we were having this conversation actually, myself and my radio team, about one specific festival which is coming up this month, I think, and had obviously thrown a lot of money at the headliners on all the stages, but in doing that had created innumerable clashes where everyone who was on that one of my team wanted to see was like they're all on at the same time. They're all in the top two on all the different stages, whereas you could have spent less money on some of the bigger acts and propped up the middle card where you can see bands on the way up in a staggered way where you can where they're not clashing time wise with each other.
I saw a local festival. That somewhere in Essex, and it had like 1 or 2 name bands at the top, and then every single other band was a tribute band. Right. Which I was thinking, well, I don't want to assume that's cheap because like tribute bands get decent money, but they bring in the money at the bar, don't we? I think we talked originally about how tribute bands are the biggest thing for. But you sort of think that was an example of maybe you get the 2 big bands at the top, and then the rest of the bill is proven crowd pleasers, but possibly not on the same level. But it is weird. I mean, I know. I think one of my ambitions for this podcast is for us to get big enough, and I will pay for this. I won't expect payment. I will pay to DJ at the Laser Spider at Glastonbury. That's my ambition. I will pay it. I'll pay Emily Evis to let me have a DJ set in the giant Laser Spider.
Do you think you can buy Emily Evis though? I don't know.
I don't think so. I think she has strong principles ethically and also musically, and I would fail on both of those. But I think I think that is the way to do it, though, isn't it? The more you can do at a festival, the more you can do it, and But I mean, it's a shame because we talked about Nadine Shah, didn't we, recently, not being able to put the show she wanted to put on. So in all seriousness, if people lower down the bill aren't getting the same kind of rises up, but you're going to kind of, as fans, you're going to lose out because you might not see someone performing to their full potential.
I think a part of this is down to the massive expansion of festivals as well, which means your big name artists have to be even bigger. If your festival is a 40,000 capacity, then you can aim at a certain level of fame for your headline acts. You expand upwards. I mean, I'm thinking of particularly Reading Festival, which used to have a capacity of around 40,000, and that's when you had, your likes of, I don't know, somebody like James or any of the bands that were big independent acts, possibly had a couple of hits. They would be worth the headliner. These days, you've got to go bigger and bigger and bigger. And Glastonbury, similarly, I think, has expanded a little bit over the last decade, and now feels on a bound to hit you with a massive headliner. So that means you're going to take more money away from the rest of the bill to pay for your massive headliner to pull the maximum amount of people to buy tickets. That's the economics of it.
That's what I mean. I think whenever we talk to someone in live, they're like, it's such a balancing act, isn't it? Now you've got to make it all work somehow and add up and be good. That's the thing. You can't if it's rubbish most of the day and then you have a good headliner. That's people aren't going to go home happy, are they? So
no,
don't envy
right.
them.
Anyway, thank you very much, Adrian, for that question. Well, in fact, thanks to everyone who's written in. And if you too have a question which you'd like answered on the show, email us. Again, that address is thepriceofmusicpodcast@gmail.com. And thank you very much for listening. Please do subscribe to the show in your podcast app if you get a chance. And if you're enjoying the programme, pass on our details to friends, family and colleagues. You can also support the show through our Patreon page, where you can become a Price of Music fan or super fan for as little as £2 a month. Just go to patreon.com/thepriceofmusic to find out more. We'll be back next week. Till then, cheerio.